Lego was founded all the way back in 1932, so obviously they've been around a super long time. Since they started, Lego's become one of the most successful toy companies in the world. So today, I'll be going over the full history of Lego, so get some popcorn. Let's start with the first set Lego ever released, set 236, Garage with Automatic Door. This set was a part of a theme called Lego Town Plan, first introduced all the way back in 1956. It had a whopping 59 pieces, and look how simple it is. It features just a white base, a door frame, and of course, the garage door, which, by the way, wasn't even motorized. And to top it off, this set didn't even include a car, but its counterpart, set 236-2, did include what we know as the very first Lego car, a 1:87 scale Volkswagen red bus. While the first Lego car really is quite impressive, keep in mind that they look like this, not really anything similar to what we know today. However, that all changed in 1962. Here is one of the first sets with real rubber wheels and a studded wheel plate. Now that's much more like it. This was a huge step in Lego's evolution, because when I think about Lego sets, some of the most memorable sets and themes ever are vehicles that couldn't exist without this. 1962 was a milestone year for Lego, but it's for a much weirder reason than you may think. Once they started making these rubber wheels for their sets, Lego actually started to become the largest tire manufacturer in the world. And while this is much bigger than this, I guess they're kind of still the same thing, right? With rapid innovations like this wheel, Lego opened the floodgates, improving with each release from then on. Next, we're going to jump forward a little bit in time to the great year of 1965. During this year, the most important thing going on wasn't the space race, and it certainly wasn't the infamous Flintstones cartoon. No, it was the release of the 001 Gears set. This set could arguably be considered the father, or should I say grandfather, of the Lego Technic theme. The set only featured 43 pieces. However, it's the details that made the set so special. It sold for about $5 back then, which in today's money would be a little under $50. The interconnected gears and wheels made this set one of the most technical sets Lego had released at the time, although the standard wasn't that high back then. That would all change though in 1978, when Kjeld Kirk Christiansen had a genius idea that marked a new era for Lego. Kjeld called this idea the system within a system, and what this really meant was that Lego was kicking it into high gear. First up was the Lego space theme. It was an instant hit. The space race was the talk of the town, so this was the perfect opportunity for Lego to make a move. The first set released under this theme was the Lego Space Cruiser. This set was a clear step up from anything the world had seen from Lego in years prior. There was a brand new logo slapped right onto the front of the ship, marking this set as part of the space theme. Along with this, there were some new minifigures too. The set featured 2 white astronaut minifigures and me. No wonder it did so well. After this, Lego continued to make groundbreaking sets, the likes of which we'd never seen, like this Viking Line Ferry Viking Saga set released in 1982. This set was one of the very early collaboration sets released by Lego. It was released as a promotional set for the company Viking Line Ferries and is one of only 5 sets that have been made under the company's name. The set is only 207 pieces and doesn't come with any minifigures, but the look of the boat is super clean. The contrast of the bright red and blue bricks on solid white is a really good look, and to be honest, this boat looks like it might even be able to float on its own. I'm not sure if Lego was trying to make flamboyant boats or not, but regardless, this one looks pretty cool. After a while though, fans were starting to get a little bored. Even though Lego was definitely upping the ante just about every year, people wanted more. So Lego thought to themselves and asked, what can we do to spice up our upcoming sets and give fans what they're looking for? Well, they landed on an answer, and that answer was minifigures. All this time, minifigures had the same face in every set, just a simple little smile. And while that's all well and good, I can see how it would be boring after a while. With that in mind, Lego made one of the most impactful decisions of their entire career. I introduced to you the Black Seas Barracuda pirate ship. Released in 1989, this is the first Lego set to introduce minifigures with different faceplates. While it's not anything crazy by today's standards, back then this was monumental. Finally, the fans got something new, and the best part was that this innovation had an endless amount of possibilities. Faceplates are a super important part of both minifigures and Lego sets today, so this step up truly was a turning point. Unfortunately though, soon after this wonderful idea, Lego made a very big mistake. The success of Lego wasn't just a straight line up to the sky. They had ups and downs just like anything else that succeeds in the business world, but this one was a little drastic. In 1992, for some odd reason, Lego decided to fire a bunch of the designers who made the sets from the 1970s through the 1990s. These are the same people that made Lego what it was at the time, so firing them was an outrageous move. Nonetheless, it happened, and for about 8 years, LEGO was in the dark ages. It wasn't all bad though. Two of the most iconic themes of the modern era were released during this time period: LEGO Star Wars and LEGO Harry Potter. These days, there isn't a single person who likes LEGOs and doesn't know about either of these themes. Whether it's the massive sets from the Ultimate Collector's series or the giant Hogwarts castle set, everybody's heard of them at least once in their life. Their success wouldn't come until later though, so unfortunately for LEGO, they were still in the red. That was until 2005. After being down for about 8 years, LEGO finally decided it was time to switch gears and get their head back in the game. They decided it would be best to focus on their core products, and with this, they reintroduced the Duplo theme that had been retired a little while ago. From here on out, it was smooth sailing. They started releasing video games, which as we all know became super popular. Aside from that, they released both the LEGO games and LEGO Power Miners theme. They didn't last crazy long, but they did decently well for the time. Leave it to LEGO to hit another turning point though. In 2007, they released one of the most iconic sets of all time, which has been remade a bunch of times since its original release. I'm talking about the Millennium Falcon, released in 2007. This was part of the original Ultimate Collector series, and is one of the most sought after sets in all of LEGO. This is a little interesting to me though, because 3 years earlier in 2002, LEGO had released a gigantic Imperial Star Destroyer, but for some reason the Millennium Falcon became the headliner. It doesn't really make much sense to me, but it's whatever I guess. Anyways, the Millennium Falcon was a pivotal moment in LEGO history. Since it became so popular, it showed LEGO that they can easily make sets with more childlike themes and aim them for adults. Some of the most popular sets in recent years have piece counts that are through the roof, and this set is what made that the norm. It had an outstanding 5,219 pieces, which was absolutely insane for 2007. This wasn't the end of LEGO's creativity though. In 2008, they launched the LEGO Ideas program. Originally, it was actually only in Japan, just in case it didn't work out. They had no reason to be timid though, because as we know today, LEGO Ideas is one of the most popular programs ever made by LEGO. Since 2008, 54 fan-made sets have been made into real sets that you can actually buy. Considering it's been 16 years, that really isn't a lot of sets. I guess that just goes to show how picky the people over at LEGO are. LEGO Ideas was a bit of a slow burn though, and at the time LEGO needed immediate success, and their next big move hit the nail right on the head. In 2011, they revealed one of the most popular themes of all time, LEGO Ninjago, and with this theme, they dove right into the deep end. Along with the first sets they released, they also aired the famous TV show Ninjago Masters of Spin Jutsu. The show went crazy, raising the sales of sets under the theme exponentially. It seems like LEGO saw the success of LEGO Star Wars and noticed that people are much more willing to buy something when a story is involved. Knowing this helped a lot in Ninjago's rise to stardom. The show has an incredible 4.8 star rating as of today, making it the highest rated LEGO show of all time. Their success in the media industry didn't end there though. Just 3 years later in 2014, the most historical LEGO project of the modern era shocked the world. Of course, I'm talking about the LEGO Movie. There wasn't anything LEGO related that was cooler than this, and the sets that came with it were even cooler. Not only did we get to watch the crazy story of Emmett the minifigure, but we even got to build his beloved double-decker couch, along with 17 other insane sets straight from the movie. My personal favorites are the Super Cycle Chase, Trash Chomper, and Metalbeard Sea Cow sets. Just like before with Ninjago, this was a theory that LEGO had already proven. If you made good media, people will want to buy products for it. Right around this time period though, LEGO was kicking it up a notch in a totally different department. I'm talking about the LEGO Technic sets, and from there on out, they were out of this world. Since 1977, LEGO has been perfecting the Technic line, making sure the sets are more challenging and much more rewarding. The amount of bangers they had in 2015 though was off the charts. Like, check out this 24 hours race car set. This thing is a beast. Even though it's only made up of 1,219 pieces, it has all the functions of the Technic cars of today. Considering this set was released 9 years ago, I'd say that's pretty impressive. In 2016 though, they dropped the very first LEGO Porsche 911 GT3 RS. Today, this set is a staple of the Technic line and is loved by just about everyone. It doesn't end there though. In 2017, they released this awesome LEGO Air Race jet, which looks just like a fighter jet, but in this super cool lightning blue color. Okay, I know I jumped a few years there, but I mean, come on, I had to. These sets are so cool. Going back to 2016, I want to talk about a set that at first glance doesn't really have much significance. This is the Fun in the Park set. While it doesn't doesn't look like much, there's actually a minifigure that marks a very important date in LEGO history. This is the baby minifigure, and its first time seeing the light of day was in this set right here. Now, even though LEGO had made smaller figures in the past, they were nothing like this one. First, there were the shorter legs that could be swapped out on any minifigure. Then there were the micro figures that were made to be launched with the LEGO Games theme. And finally, there were nano figures, which didn't really have a reason to be made, but nonetheless were really cool. This baby minifigure is completely different though. It has a whole new body mold that was specifically made for itself. The creation of this little guy sparked the idea for so many different versions. Now he has different outfits, facial expressions, and he even comes in a nice little blanket. Let's move on from that though, and talk about one of the most anticipated LEGO sets of the last 5 years, the LEGO Coliseum. The Coliseum was teased way back in March 2020 before its initial release, and as soon as the internet got a hold of it, there was an instant demand for it. The set wouldn't release for another 8 months, but when it finally did, fans everywhere went crazy. People were scooping this thing up like nobody's business. The set comes with a jaw-dropping 9,036 pieces, and since it was aimed more for adults, there are no minifigures to be found. It's regarded as one of the biggest and most sought-after LEGO sets of the modern era, and I can definitely see why. If you thought that was cool though, wait until you see what LEGO's doing now in 2024. This is the Polaroid camera LEGO set. This is another one of those sets that when the internet got a hold of it, wanted nothing more than for it to be released. But there's a bit of a twist. This set was actually made by a fan and published onto the LEGO Ideas website over a year before it was finally released. I personally saw it in the early days of its lifetime and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Now that it's actually available for purchase, there are some sick details that make the set even better. It comes with these 3 Polaroid replicas and a case to hold them in. The Polaroid camera retails for about $80. I suggest you get yourself one before it's gone, because this one's definitely making it into the LEGO history books. I'm sure most of you watching this video know how the story begins. In 1978, LEGO released the first official minifigure, the police officer. But did you know that before then, LEGO had already done some experimenting with figures? Back in 1974, so 4 years before the first official minifigure, LEGO released these things called LEGO building figures. They have round yellow heads and pretty minimal facial features. They also have movable arms, torsos, and legs that are all made of LEGO bricks. The figures were a great success, and set number 200 in particular sells very well. From here, LEGO knew that there was a market for figures, so as the years went on, they continued to test the waters. The main problem with the building figures was that they were a little too tall, and once they were built, nothing could really be done with them. Their solution for this was this minifigure, which was first seen in set 370 in 1976. These minifigures were what sparked everything. Obviously, these guys aren't anything special by today's standards. They have no faceplate, no arms, and you can't even separate the legs. But what they did have were attachable feet. Stud holes on the bottom of minifigures were first made on these guys, and as we all know, every single minifigure has them now. So it really was a revolutionary innovation. These stud holes made it so the minifigure could be attached to any LEGO stud, and it would actually stay in place. But this wasn't enough for LEGO. They knew they could do better, and that's exactly what they did. 2 years later, in 1978, the police officer was released in set 600, and from there, everything changed. The set was an instant hit. Everybody was absolutely in love with the police officer minifigure. LEGO knew they had struck gold, so the only thing left to do was get creative. That same year, the LEGO Town, LEGO Space, and LEGO Castle themes were all created, and with them came some insane minifigures. The police officer was from the town theme, but for the other two, we got the original LEGO astronauts and an assortment of LEGO knights. For the next 10 years, there wasn't much of a difference between a lot of the minifigures. They were all the same color yellow, and they all had the exact same faceplate too. But in 1989, LEGO kicked it up a notch when they introduced the LEGO pirate theme. The best example of that is set 6251, Pirate Minifigures. The set is literally just 5 minifigures finding some treasure. But for 1989, this was insane. These 5 brand new minifigures were revolutionary. They were way more detailed than any minifigure that had come before them. I mean, just look at these faceplates. The designs printed on the body and legs were also nothing short of astounding. But the best part about these minifigures is that LEGO went way out of the box. Captain Redbeard was given a peg leg instead of the 2 legs a minifigure would usually get. So not only was LEGO playing around with faceplates, outfits, and accessories, but they were also experimenting with the fundamentals of minifigures. Once again, LEGO got a little comfortable after this, and didn't make that many changes for quite a while. But after about 10 more years, they'd reinvent the wheel again with LEGO Star Wars. As we all know, it's pretty obvious that LEGO Star Wars is one of the most popular LEGO themes of all time. The fact is, if you start getting into LEGO, you're gonna run into LEGO Star Wars one way or another. But I don't think you guys realize just how much this singular theme affected the entire course of minifigures. One of the biggest innovations for minifigures was the introduction of short legs. Believe it or not, these leg pieces are actually decently new, and the first minifigure to ever have them was Yoda back in 2002. From there on, they'd be used on minifigures like children, gnomes, goblins, and many others. But the craziest thing about this Yoda minifigure wasn't the fact that his legs were shorter. Yoda's headpiece was way different when compared to anything people had seen from LEGO in the past. He's far from human, so LEGO had no choice but to make a completely new head model specifically for Yoda. The thing about Star Wars, though, was that this was the case for a bunch of different characters. Some of the most drastic being Darth Maul, who has horns on his head, Jar Jar Binks, who has even bigger ears than Yoda, and R2-D2, who isn't even human. For each and every one of these characters, LEGO was forced to think outside of the box and improvise. But they did this a little earlier than 2002 with Yoda. As a matter of fact, the first minifigure that used a new head model was Jar Jar Binks back in 1999. For a character like this, there was no way LEGO could have used the traditional cylinder head that they'd been using all this time. And if they did, I doubt LEGO Star Wars would have been as successful as it is now. A lot of the minifigures would have ended up with extremely flat faces and weird looking heads when compared to their character in the movie. So incorporating the third dimension was definitely the right call. But for some characters, LEGO had to take it even further. For Chewbacca, instead of making just a headpiece, they actually made a piece that had the head and chest together as one. This piece would then be slid on top of the minifigure's body and act as two pieces instead of one. This wasn't the case for R2-D2 though. He's a droid that doesn't resemble a human in the slightest bit. So how was LEGO supposed to pull off something like this? Well, for this one, they decided to incorporate some design aspects from the LEGO Technic line. His head was made from a silver dome, his body was a cylinder with 4 stud holes on top and 2 holes in the side, and his legs were 2 white parts that had Technic pins attached to the sides. So what you'd have to do here is attach the head on top of the body and snap the 2 legs into place on either side. And bam, you had yourself your very own R2-D2 minifigure. Now, I could ramble on and on about how much LEGO Star Wars changed the game for minifigures, but that would probably get a little boring. So let's move on to something new. Around the time all of this was happening with LEGO Star Wars, LEGO was also dipping their toes into the action figure industry. What I'm talking about is LEGO Bionicle, which was first seen in 2001. Now, before you say it, I know, Bionicles aren't technically minifigures, but they're still a very important part of minifigure history. Bionicle was one of the biggest LEGO themes of its time, and to this day, many fans are still upset about its retirement. What separated Bionicle from the rest of LEGO was the fact that every set was a figurine, and they were all made using pieces from the Technic line. This was the first time that LEGO had done something like this, and let me remind you, they hadn't randomly introduced new figures to the world since 1974, so this was a pretty big deal. Bionicle's original run lasted from 2001 to 2010, so a total of 9 years. In that time though, LEGO released hundreds of sets under the theme, and they even launched a show on Cartoon Network based on the storyline. From there, the theme was brought back in 2015 to 2016, and then once more in 2023. I'm not really sure what their goal is with Bionicle, but regardless, it's still one of the most successful LEGO figure themes ever. Getting back to the minifigures, there are hundreds of examples I could give that show off how they've evolved throughout the early 2000s. We have General Grievous from LEGO Star Wars, Hagrid from LEGO Harry Potter, and 4 different versions of LEGO Mickey Mouse. But what I want to talk about are the big changes that LEGO's made along the way. The kind of stuff that reshapes how we see minifigures. And the next time that happened was 2008, with the introduction of Big Figures. Big Figures are basically just LEGO figurines that are taller and sometimes more muscular than regular minifigures. Some of the best examples of these are the Hulk, Thanos, and the Wampa from Star Wars. Before all of these guys and more were made though, LEGO did what they do best and ran an experiment all the way back in 1999. Back then, there was a theme called LEGO Rock Raiders, and we didn't know it at the time, but it was actually the first time we'd ever come across big figures. The rock monsters from this theme were much bigger than any minifigure at the time, and even though LEGO didn't know it, they were actually the reason big figures were even made in the first place. Moving on from that though, let's continue our journey through the early 2000s. Just 1 year after big figures were introduced, LEGO decided to move in the opposite direction and scale down instead of up. These are LEGO micro figures, and they were actually created for the sole purpose of being used in the LEGO Games theme. LEGO Games was a theme made back in 2009, and every set was actually a different game you had to build to play. For some of these games, you needed pieces to represent yourself in the game, like Minotaurus for example. This is where micro figures came into play. Instead of using something like a brick or a stud, LEGO provided micro figures to keep things fun and fresh. They were a perfect fit, especially because they could fit on just one stud. But what's crazy about this is that these aren't even the smallest LEGO figures we've seen. That's right, the rabbit hole goes even deeper. These are LEGO Nano figures, and they were introduced just 1 year after micro figures in 2010. Originally, they were only made in metallic colors and were used to represent trophies and miniature statues. But from 2011 and on, they started printing character designs on them and throwing them in some LEGO sets. Their most famous appearance is in set 71043, Hogwarts Castle. Just like the micro figures, nano figures also only need one stud to be set in place, but the actual character model was much smaller than the stud size. This was perfect for the Hogwarts Castle set, because it allowed LEGO to make some really small rooms and still be able to put characters from the movies in the right spots. For example, there's a scene from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone where Harry, Ron, and Hermione are in a room full of flying keys. This room was actually incorporated into the Hogwarts set, and because of how small nano figures are, LEGO was able to put the 3 characters there, just like how they were in the movie. There are tons of insane details like this all throughout the Hogwarts set that would be a lot harder to pull off if it weren't for nano figures. So this was definitely a smart move from LEGO. For a while after this, LEGO hadn't done anything revolutionary like before, but that didn't mean that the minifigures weren't awesome. This next LEGO theme has some of the most intricate and detailed minifigures that have ever been made by LEGO. They were made all the way back in 2010, so when you see them, keep in mind how old they are. This is the LEGO Atlantis theme, and it's based on the lost city of Atlantis. As you can imagine, most of the minifigures made for this theme were divers, and they had all sorts of different faceplates and designs. Some of the craziest divers, though, were Axel and Ace. Axel has lights attached on his back to help him see deep underwater, and Ace has a giant propeller on his back to help him move faster. These are some insane additions that hadn't really been done before, at least to this extent. A minifigure with a propeller that big on his back was something we just hadn't seen. Now, these divers might be cool, but what really makes the Atlantis theme stand out are the warrior minifigures. These are the LEGO Shark Warrior, Squid Warrior, Hammerhead Warrior, and Manta Warrior minifigures, and they have some of the coolest headpieces ever made. Believe it or not, these headpieces aren't one giant piece. These minifigures actually have the typical head shape that most minifigures have, but they also have pieces that get attached on top of their head and complete the character. Besides the Shark Warrior, his headpiece is an entirely different thing. Along with that though, the faceplates for these guys are out of this world. The Squid Warrior has some of the most menacing eyes ever, and I don't think I've seen the Manta Warrior faceplate on another minifigure. Regardless, the minifigures from the Atlantis theme overall were a huge step forward for LEGO. This theme was made back in 2010 though, so what's changed with minifigures from then up until now? Well, the truth is there isn't a lot. Because of how much LEGO expanded on their idea in the early days of minifigures, they have so much room to work with in terms of character design. They've innovated everything from faceplates to leg size and even the entire minifigure itself. However, there is one last major change that occurred in the last 14 years. Back in 2016, LEGO introduced the baby minifigure in set 60134, the Fun in the Park set. It was a never before seen minifigure that was so small it actually fit in the hands of regular size minifigures. The mold itself hasn't been used that many times though. It's mainly seen in LEGO City sets, and other than that, it isn't seen that many times. There's the LEGO Jack minifigure from The Incredibles, and then the LEGO Grogu minifigure from The Mandalorian. I gotta say, even though it hasn't been used that much, this baby minifigure has some pretty big names under his belt. This is the 001 Gears set, and even though nobody knew it at the time, this singular LEGO set was the pioneer for the Technic line as a whole. Now, obviously nowadays the set doesn't look like much, but for 1965 this was a huge deal. It was the first time that LEGO had ever released Gears, so a lot of people were really surprised. Unfortunately though, this didn't help with sales, and the Gears weren't seen much after their initial release. As we know today, a lot of LEGO Technic sets rely on Gears to be built, and sometimes these sets can't even function without them, so they really are super important. After these Gears were released though, it took LEGO a pretty long time to do anything else in the technical category. That was until 1977. That year, LEGO released the first ever technical sets, and yes, that was their actual name. They released a tractor, a car, a helicopter, and a forklift, all of which used pieces that gave the LEGO Technic line its fame. But the pieces weren't the only thing that made people want these LEGO sets. The way that these pieces had to be put together made the building process much more challenging than the traditional brick building process everyone was used to. But for a lot of people, this was exactly what they were looking for, so LEGO had no choice but to keep going. Those 4 sets from before were from 1977, which, considering how big LEGO was at that time, is a very small amount of sets to be made for a whole LEGO theme in just 1 year. In the years after this though, LEGO not only made way more Technic sets each year, but as time went on, they got more and more intricate. 1980 was a huge year for LEGO Technic, and is arguably one of the most important years in the theme's history, and it's for good reason. For the first time, LEGO released a fully buildable and functionable engine, but there's way more to it than that. The instructions showed 4 different ways this engine could be built, and each of them looked completely different. With the 242 pieces, you could build a 3-cylinder inline engine, a V6 engine, a 6-cylinder horizontal engine, and a 2-cycle engine. With all of these options to choose from, people were more enticed to pick up the set for themselves, and I can't say I blame them. To be honest, I'd probably have picked up 4 copies just for myself, so I could have every engine combination. This was all the way back in 1980 though, and the next big milestone wasn't until the year 1982. Funnily enough though, this milestone actually has nothing to do with the sets that were being released, because this is the year that LEGO officially started using the word Technic. Let's just be honest here. Technical sets is an okay name, but Technic just sounds way cooler. Anyways, yes, 1982 was when LEGO first introduced the word Technic, and from then on, every set that used those technical pieces were now under the Technic line. But if you think this is all that happened in 1982, you're completely wrong. LEGO continued releasing more experimental sets, and they just kept on working. People were absolutely loving the Technic line, so it made complete sense for LEGO to keep upping the ante. The whole reason LEGO Technic was even made in the first place was to give LEGO fans a more challenging outlet for their building skills, so it only made sense to make the sets more difficult and have more pieces. But what if I told you that along with adding more pieces, LEGO started adding different ones too? This is the LEGO Technic Universal Motor Set, and it's actually the first official LEGO set that includes a motor. As we know today, motors play a huge role in a bunch of different sets from the Technic line, but this set is the one that started it all. Much like the auto engine from 1980, the Universal Motor Set could be built in multiple different ways. The instructions included steps for a car, a robot, a crane, a helicopter, and a buggy, all of which used the motor. After LEGO released this set, they were able to expand more on the already young Technic line. At that point, Technic had only been around for about 5 years, and not that many sets had been made for it yet, so LEGO had a bunch of different things that they could do with the theme. For some reason though, they still weren't making that many sets for the Technic line. For both 1983 and 1984, LEGO only made 3 sets for the entire year. My guess is that since the Technic pieces hadn't been around very long, there weren't many designers who actually knew how to make sets using the intricate pieces that Technic called for. So as a result, not many were produced. However, that didn't stop them from hitting milestones, because in 1988, the biggest Technic set of the time period was released. And when I say biggest, I literally mean the biggest. This is the LEGO Test Car set, and clocking in at 900 pieces, it was the single biggest LEGO set released under the Technic line at the time. This set was only released 6 years after the motor had been implemented into other sets, but LEGO wasn't cutting any corners during that time. Since it had 900 pieces, this allowed LEGO to add some crazy details. Along with the V4 engine in the back, this set also included double wishbone suspension for all 4 wheels, a 3-speed gearbox, and pop-up headlights. Considering this car is literally only made out of LEGO pieces, there is a lot going on here. I mean, the fact that this car has a functioning gearbox is absolutely insane. It's even more crazy to think about the fact that all of this was done over 35 years ago. Regardless, let's keep it moving and see how the Technic line continues on its path. The next thing I want to show you guys is a set from 1989. This isn't just any regular old LEGO Technic set though. As we all know, most Technic sets are vehicles, but the one I'm going to show you actually isn't. This is the LEGO Technic figure set from 1989. I understand if you're having doubts, but trust me when I say that this set is 100% real. These are some of the first buildable figures that LEGO ever produced, besides the ones from the 60s, of course. The set came with 10 pieces, and with them, you can make 3 different figures. This wasn't the first time we'd seen these Technic figures, though. They'd also come in a few sets in years prior, like the Snow Scooter and Polar Copter from 1986. Believe it or not, these are actually the only figures that have ever been sold with LEGO Technic sets. Since the idea behind Technic was that it was made for strictly building, I guess LEGO thought it'd be a bad idea to include regular minifigures with the sets. As a result, these Technic figures were used for a little while, but were eventually dropped in 2001. Since then, nobody's really complained about there being a lack of figures, so LEGO didn't really have any reason to add them back or come up with something different. 2001 is a little far ahead on the timeline though. Let's take it back a few years and see what LEGO Technic was getting up to in the 90s. This is when LEGO really started to pick things up. For most of the 80s, LEGO was being pretty conservative, not only with the amount of sets they released for Technic, but they also didn't expand on their ideas as much as they could have. All of that changed in the 1990s though. To start the decade, they released a set called the Control Center, which was way different than anything they had ever released before. Not only did it include the new and improved 9-volt motor system, but it had 2 of them. It also had an electric box called the Control Center, hence the name of the set, that you could actually manually program. This thing was capable of powering 3 different motors on 3 different channels, which was absolutely insane for the time. The Control Center was the first LEGO set that allowed the builder to program the power system for LEGO motors, so you can imagine how excited fans must have been when it came out. Although that was was only one of 7 sets released that year, the innovation didn't stop there. In 1991, LEGO continued making all sorts of vehicles, and they even expanded more into motorcycles. That year, they released things like the Shock Cycle set, the Cafe Racer set, the Speedway Bandit set, the Mountain Rambler set, and a couple others. It was clear to see with these sets that LEGO was starting to kick things up a notch. The details were a lot more accurate, pieces were being used more wisely, and overall, the sets just looked better. Even with all of this in mind though, nothing could have prepared you for what LEGO was about to release the next year. Remember when I said that the 90s is when LEGO Technic really started to take off? Well, 1992 is when everything changed. This is the LEGO AirTag Claw Rig set, and coming in at just over 950 pieces, it was the biggest set LEGO had released for Technic since the test car back in 1988. I'm just gonna be honest here, this thing is absolutely insane. Not only does it have the front end of a semi-truck, but the back end literally has an industrial claw machine on the back of it. What more can you ask for from a LEGO set? No, but in all seriousness, this set completely stood out from the rest back in the day. It could be built in 2 different ways, which was pretty common for sets in the Technic line, so that's always a plus. That stuff was all regular at this point though. What really made this set stand out was the fact that it was the first LEGO set to include a motorized pneumatic compressor, or in other words, compressed air. Even crazier than that though, is that this is literally the only time LEGO has ever done this, meaning this set is the only one in existence with a motorized air compressor. Pretty cool if you ask me. LEGO continued to up the ante like this all throughout the rest of the 90s. In fact, in 1993, they started making what they call multi-mode sets, which are basically just sets with a decently low piece count that can be made into 4 different vehicles. The next year in 1994, they released the first official supercar under the Technic line, which as we know today, supercars are some of the most sought after sets in all of LEGO, let alone the Technic line. So that's definitely an important milestone. To be honest though, I'm not exactly sure what type of supercar this is. Maybe they just used the name to try and get people to buy it. Needless to say though, they made up for it in 1995 because they released one of the coolest sets the Technic line has ever seen. This is the LEGO Control Center 2 set, a new and improved version of the original Control Center set from 1990, but this one was way better. Instead of being able to control a pen like before, the Control Center 2 set allowed you to control an actual build, and you had 3 different options to choose from: a helicopter, a dinosaur, and a boat. Once you built your model of choice and hooked everything up to the control center, you had full control of whatever you decided to build. This set is by far one of the coolest Technic sets of the 1990s, and in terms of innovation, this is about as far as they got. LEGO continued to make bigger and more detailed sets, but the 2000s is when they decided to start making more progress. What I'm talking about here is Bionicle. Starting in 2001, LEGO Bionicle quickly became one of the most famous LEGO themes at the time. Unlike the already famous Technic line, Bionicle actually only consisted of figures, not vehicles. I'm sure many of you watching had your own Bionicle set, and if not, you've at least heard of it. Bionicle was basically impossible to miss in the early 2000s. I mean, it literally had a TV show on Cartoon Network. Getting back to the sets though, there's one in particular I want to show you from the year 2000. This is the first official Formula 1 LEGO set, known as the Silver Champion. This is what I meant before when I said that LEGO started making more progress in the 2000s. I mean, just look at this thing. It comes with 1,431 pieces, and it looks identical to an actual Formula 1 race car. It didn't just look like one though, it moved like one too. The piston engine actually moves once the wheels start turning. Oh, and speaking of the wheels, you can turn those. Yeah, you can literally steer this thing. By the year 2000, having steerable wheels was nothing new for a set under the Technic line, but it's still a sick detail. From there on out, LEGO Technic went on to make some of the most insane sets we've ever seen. So instead of going into super deep detail like I have been, instead I'll just show off what LEGO's been able to do in the past 24 years. In 2007, LEGO took a huge step up from what they had been making before. The sets in the years prior were cool and all, but they have nothing on the sets I'm about to show you now. This motorized bulldozer, combine harvester, and off-road truck were all released in 2007. And I'll just be the one to say it, these sets are insane. The attention to detail here was nothing like we'd ever seen at the time, and with that came some pretty high piece counts. The motorized bulldozer alone had over 1,300 pieces, and the other 2 sets had just around 1,000 all for themselves. This may not sound like a lot, but keep in mind that some of these Technic pieces are super tiny, so putting them all together takes way more time than regular bricks. Moving on from those though, we got this massive mobile crane in 2010, this extreme cruiser in 2011, and this insane 4x4 crawler in 2012. Keep in mind that all of this progress is being made over the course of just a couple years, which really isn't a lot of time when it comes to architecture and engineering. Okay, those last sets are pretty cool, but to save you some boredom, I'm gonna skip a few years and show you what type of Technic sets have been made in the last 10 years. Get ready, because these guys are nuts. The amount of bangers they had in 2015 was honestly just uncalled for. Check out this 24 hours race car set. Even though it's only made up of 1,219 pieces, it has all the functions of the Technicars of today. Considering this set was released 9 years ago, I'd say that's pretty impressive. The next year though, they got even better. In 2016, LEGO dropped the very first LEGO Porsche 911 GT3 RS. Today, this set is a staple of the Technic line, and literally everyone wishes they could have it. It doesn't end there though. In 2017, they released this crazy LEGO Air Race jet, which looks literally just like a fighter jet. Insane. Alright, so at this point, we've seen how far LEGO has taken the Technic line since its birth in 1977. But to end the video, there's one last set that I want to talk about. This is the LEGO Bell Boeing V-22 Osprey, and it's known as one of the rarest and most controversial LEGO sets to date. Back in 2020, this thing was teased by LEGO all over social media. The fans went crazy when they saw it, so LEGO decided to release it that same year. At least that's what they thought was going to happen. The Osprey never actually hit the shelves, and as a result, it's one of the rarest and most unobtainable LEGO sets to ever exist. The only way you could have gotten one is if you had some shady backdoor connection to a LEGO manufacturer and were able to convince them to give you one before they were banned. The reason behind this ban is what makes it so controversial though. According to the internet, this plane was only used by the military, and that's something that LEGO said they aren't comfortable with. According to LEGO, they never want to distribute a vehicle of any kind that's actively being used by any military. So as a result, the Osprey was pulled from production. When people heard this though, a lot of them had the same question. If your policy is to never produce anything that's used by the military, then why was this set made in the first place? Unfortunately, we never got an answer to that question, so the Osprey story ended there. This is by far one of the most important parts of LEGO Technic's history, so I had to include it in the video. This is a real McDonald's minifigure. I can't even believe that this is actually real. There are a million fakes out on the market these days. So for this to be an official LEGO minifigure is pretty insane. Like, look at these Ronald McDonald and Hamburglar minifigures. You might think these look pretty official, right? Well, they aren't. So that just makes this minifigure being real that much crazier. I bet you didn't know this guy existed, but don't worry, you'll hear all about it by the end of the video, so stick around. We all know LEGO as a toy company, right? Well, what if I told you that they tried to dip their toes into the food business? That's right, back in 2007, LEGO actually had a collab with Kellogg's, one of the biggest food manufacturers in America. Only 2 products were ever released for this collab, the LEGO Eggos and the LEGO Fun Snacks. At first glance, this stuff looks pretty cool, but what LEGO seemed to forget was that their company made toys for kids, so making real food look like their toys probably wasn't the best idea. A lot of parents had complaints about their children putting plastic 2x2 Lego bricks in their mouth after eating the Lego Fun Snacks, and to be honest, I can't blame them. Those Fun Snacks were probably pretty good, but because of how similar they look to real Lego bricks, they caused too many problems and ultimately had to be dumped. Up next is a collab with a company you've probably never even heard of. This is a company called Muji, a Japan-based company that specializes in everything related to home goods. Back in 2009, LEGO and Muji released a total of 16 different sets over a 2-year time period, and they were actually really unique. What made them so unique is that they came with this Muji brand hole puncher and some paper. The hole puncher was the same size as Lego studs, allowing people to punch as many holes into this paper as they want and add a new creative dimension to their builds. LEGO never gave any reason as to why they stopped making these sets, so unfortunately we'll never have an answer. Up next is this insane LEGO Crocs collab. Now, I know we've all seen the LEGO Adidas shoes, which were released in 2021, but would you believe me if I told you that this isn't the first official LEGO shoe? This piece of modern art was released all the way back in 2012, so it seems like LEGO had been wanting to make footwear for a while. 5 different colors were released, and I'm just gonna say it right now, I need these. Bad. Unlike your usual everyday Crocs, these bad boys come with a LEGO pattern that's wrapped all the way around the entire shoe, along with the LEGO logo slapped right on top of it. I think I can speak for all of us when I say that everything looks better with the LEGO logo. Not only were there 5 colorways, but some of them actually came with fur on the inside. You're telling me that I could not only look sick in my LEGO Crocs, but I could be warm too? Yeah, these are a must. Where's my wallet? Up next is another collab in the clothing business, and if for some reason you didn't like those Crocs, you might like this stuff a little more. This is the LEGO Levi's collab, and it's one that I don't think anyone could have seen coming. What business does a toy company have making a product with a denim company? Regardless, it happened, and what we got out of it was pretty cool. The release included hoodies, jeans, a jeans jacket, t-shirts, and hats, all of which had this sick LEGO baseplate sewn directly onto the garment. They were all branded as wearable art, which is a pretty cool slogan to be honest. This whole thing happened back in 2020, but that doesn't mean it isn't expensive. Currently, everything is out of stock, and if you wanted to get your hands on, let's say, the jacket, you'd have to cough up anywhere from roughly $150 to $300. Man, wearable art does not come cheap. Remember before when I just offhandedly mentioned the LEGO Adidas collab? Well, why don't we take a deeper look into that? The most famous product from that partnership is the LEGO Adidas ZX8000. But these days, there are a bunch of different styles to choose from. One of the more popular ones is this Ultra Boost, but there's another shoe in particular that I want to talk about. This is the Adidas Superstar. It's basically the staple of Adidas shoes, and having been around for over 50 years, I'd say it's for a good reason. Now, this is the LEGO Adidas Superstar. Pretty cool, right? It's got a super low-key LEGO look to it that is bound to attract people no matter what. But this is the Adidas Superstar we're talking about here. It's literally the staple of Adidas shoes, so LEGO had to have done more for this shoe, right? Well, they did, and it's far from wearable. This is the LEGO Adidas Superstar set, and it's one of the coolest LEGO sets ever. This is one of the only official LEGO sneakers ever released, and the fact that they made a wearable shoe to match with it is super sick. This really just goes to show how dedicated LEGO actually is. Oh, and by the way, LEGO has done some expanding since the original collab back in 2021. There are now LEGO hoodies and sweatpants you can buy on the Adidas website, and they even have some baby clothes too. I think I know what gift I'm bringing at the next baby shower. Up next is another collab that was totally unexpected, but I guess that's what this video is all about. Back in 2020, LEGO did a huge project with a company known as IKEA. IKEA is one of the biggest furniture manufacturers in the country. They're especially known for making relatively cheap furniture that still looks really nice. It's a brand that's loved by everyone, so instead of just doing your everyday collab, LEGO decided to build an entire project. The official name is Bygleck, at least I think that's how you say it, and the whole point was to keep kids playing. They started off by presenting 5 boxes, 1 large box, 1 medium box, and 3 small boxes. All 5 of these boxes are made out of LEGO material, so not only are they perfect for storage, but you can actually implement them into your builds. The idea came from a man named Andreas Fredriksson, and the whole reason he did this was because he believed that it's only when you step outside of your comfortable little box that you can really start to make things better, which is absolutely true. Only 1 set was ever released for this project. But sometimes less is more. In fact, the set itself only had 201 pieces and 2 minifigures. But there's something really cool about this set that you might not expect. It doesn't come with any instructions. Now I know that sounds weird, but just let me explain. You see, the whole point behind this project was to inspire creativity, and because of that, IKEA and LEGO alike wanted people to buy the set with the storage bins and let their imaginations run wild. This is another one of those instances where you can really see how dedicated LEGO is to what they do. They were able to make an incredible project with one of the biggest brands in America and give it purpose. Nobody does it quite like LEGO. This next collab is actually one that you would never guess, and it's not because of the company. In fact, another company wasn't even involved. It was made entirely possible by crowdfunding, which is insane to think about. A website called Indiegogo hosted a space on their website that allowed a random designer's ideas to come to life. And the best part was that since it was done this way, the designer actually got 10% of the earnings for this project. It was called LEGO Forma, and it consisted of a couple fish and a shark made out of LEGO Technic parts. Once they were constructed, there was a lever you could turn that made the fish look like it was swimming. Pretty cool, right? These were originally released in January of 2019, and unfortunately didn't make it through the year. But regardless, the sets are still very unique and pretty fun to watch. At this point in the video, you've seen how LEGO has managed to make a name for themselves in a ton of different businesses. But there's still another one that's bound to make you scratch your head. This is the LEGO toothbrush. That's right, I didn't stutter. This is a real toothbrush that was released by Colgate, one of the most well-known dental hygiene companies in the entire world. Now you might be wondering who this weird-looking guy in the middle is, so let me tell you about him. This man here is known as Jack Stone, and he was actually the main character of an entire theme made by LEGO in 2001. The theme didn't make it past 2002, but that's not what's important here. For some reason, LEGO decided to throw this guy on a toothbrush in 2002. Now, I could say a lot of things about Jack Stone on his own, but I think I'll keep them to myself. Remember that McDonald's minifigure from before? Well, I think it's time I tell you about him. Back in 1999, LEGO dropped this set as an official release with McDonald's. It was a town-exclusive set that came with 98 pieces and 2 minifigures, one of which is this guy. This was the only set ever released with McDonald's, so this minifigure is extremely rare. I mean, considering how many fakes there are, I'd be surprised if you guys even knew he existed in the first place. Regardless though, this is one of those collabs you just don't see very often, so for it to have happened 25 years ago is pretty insane. Up next is a collab in an entirely different league. This is a LEGO Technicar. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's so special about a regular old Technicar? Well, this one was actually made together with NASCAR. It's inspired by a real NASCAR, the Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 to be exact. It has a real V8 engine, and the front wheels can actually turn just like in a real car. It has 672 pieces, and unlike just about everything else on this list, you can actually buy it on the LEGO website right now. NASCAR isn't the only sport LEGO has collabed with though. Back in 2003, the first ever LEGO NHL set released, which was huge for back then. We're talking over 20 years ago, when LEGO Star Wars didn't even have much of a name for itself yet. The first set came with only 59 pieces, and was just a model of a hockey player on the ice. Next year though, in 2004, 2 more sets would be released in collaboration with NHL, and they were way better than the one from 2003. First up is the NHL Championship set. It came with 374 pieces, and when you put it all together, you could play a real game of table hockey made completely out of LEGO bricks. But that's not even the best part. Since this was the championship set, the minifigures uniforms are based on the NHL All-Star Game uniforms from the 1990s. I think it's safe to say this is one of the most functional LEGO sets in history. The third and final NHL set is in a similar boat though. It's called the Street Hockey set, and it's just as the name implies. Once all 114 pieces are put together, you can use your masterpiece to play a game of table hockey, street style. The 2 minifigures may not be as cool as the ones from the championship set, but nonetheless, this set is still super sick. This next collab is one that's pretty famous, but it's for all the wrong reasons. I'm sure you've all seen the Nesquik Bunny minifigure. Sorry if I'm giving some of you guys PTSD, but it has to be done. Now, I know your first reaction when you see this thing is probably to run away, but have you ever actually stopped to think about the fact that LEGO collabed with Nesquik? While this minifigure is super famous, the 3 sets that it came with aren't. Those 3 sets are the Nesquik Quickie Film set, the Nesquik Rabbit set, and the Nesquik Rabbit Racer set. None of them had more than 30 pieces altogether, and were more of a promotional stunt than anything else. All 3 of these sets were released between the years 2001 and 2002 before completely disappearing. But to be honest, I don't think any of us are complaining about that. Keep that guy away from me. The last collab on this list was actually with a store that sells LEGO products. The store I'm talking about is Target, one of the biggest all-purpose stores in America. Only 2 sets were ever released for this collab, and they were a full year apart from each other. You see, they were actually gift cards that came with LEGO pieces. The first one released in 2010, and for just $5, you could build your very own LEGO Bullseye. Next year, in 2011, they did the same thing, except this time there were 3 different things you can make with the pieces. You can make a snowman, a polar bear, or Bullseye again in case you wanted to have 2. This is one of the only American toy stores LEGO has ever made a set with, and seeing as how you got a gift card with your purchase, I'd say it was pretty worth it, especially considering the fact that it was only $5. These days though, LEGO and Target have all sorts of products to choose from. Whether it's a jacket, or bag, or a few cups, they've got you covered. What was your favorite collab in this video? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.